Meeting called to order. Today is Tuesday, April 1st. Town Council Budget Public Hearing. 1170 Main Street, West Warwick, Rhode Island. Is now 6:07 p.m. Sorry for the late start. And also for the record, Councilman Messier will be a few minutes late as he had an emergency doctor's appointment. So, Mark, we lead us in prayer.
We ask for the wisdom to make your decisions, to speak with confidence and listen with compassion, and to work together to create a better way of life for the people of West Warwick. Amen.
Chief, we listen to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Roll call. Councilman Dennison?
Here.
Councilman Ricciardi?
Here.
Councilman Messier is not here yet. Council Vice President Williamson?
Here.
And Council President Goslin.
Here.
Quorum is declared.
Before we get started, town manager has a few statements, and then we'll open up to public hearing.
Good evening. As you're aware, the last 2 weeks, we held our workshops in which the town council heard from the department heads and me about the proposals for the fiscal year 2026 budget. Tonight and next Tuesday, we'll have the public hearings where the council will make adjustments to this proposal after considering public comment and welcome input. Our department heads continue to be considerate of the town's fiscal constraints and the fluctuating status of the economy while drafting requests that will support the continuation of services expected by our community and provide for the upgrading of infrastructure necessary to offer these services safely and more efficiently. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of our finance director, Kristen Benoit, in producing this proposal and keeping us on a reasonable and conservative path. Our recent budget processes continue to be affected by the uncertainty of a finalized state budget and federal funding sources, the national economy, inflation fluctuations, and rising supply costs. How will all these affect our FY 2026 revenue and expenditures planning is a work in progress. Some key points of this fiscal 2026 budget, and these have already changed slightly. We should have more firm numbers by next Tuesday. But for the most part, this total budget increase is slightly more than $5.9 million. That is inclusive of a little more than $1.7 million in municipal expenses, $3.1 million for school state aid pass-through appropriation, and a request to increase the school department's local appropriation by a little more than $991,000. The levy increase is, I believe, slightly below 4% at this point, and the approximate tax rate increase is still hovering around 2.38%. And this will fluctuate slightly as the remaining tangible annual returns come back over this week and any disputed property taxes come back online. Funds that were reserved for anticipated collective bargaining, salary adjustments for unionized staff, and salary adjustments for the non-union personnel in the FY25 budget still need to be proportionally dispersed this month, which should happen at our second meeting on April 22nd. The salary and related accounts in this FY26 proposal will appear disproportionate until then. Capital expenditure requests totaling slightly more than $1.2 million. The requests from department heads have been eliminated in my proposal with the hope of restoring several key needs if the funds become available or federal, state, and private grants or aid gets awarded. American Rescue Plan funds are no longer available to us. We have fully transitioned into the employee retirement system of Rhode Island. Rates provided by ERSRI have been applied to all pensionable salary types within their respective departments. Legacy plan employer rates have increased for fiscal year 26. In this proposal, a 5.2% increase in our healthcare working rates has been applied. Transition to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust for Healthcare Management has been a successful endeavor. A 7.5% increase was applied to our property and liability insurance premiums over the FY25 rates. The increase to workers' comp is due to slight increase in our experience modification for fiscal year 26 work-related injury expense is included in this line as well. The tax collection rate in this proposal remains at 97.0%, and there is no planned use of fund balance in this proposal. Again, we look forward to collaborating with you to craft a finalized product that will be in the best interest of our hardworking and deserving community.
Any questions for Mark from the council? I will open it up to the public. Any questions or comments on the budget?
Good evening, council. Don Reed, 62 Andrews Avenue. I've spent quite a few hours trying to line item this. Okay. Being in business, I know what budgets are. I do the same thing every year, lower scale. I'd like to just ask a question, just to see how this works out. Under a department, I won't even go into who's who over here. But, manager, could you answer me a question? Under a salary, one of your employees gets $77,449 for a salary. That same person, under this budget, for benefits, is getting $117,970. What are the benefits?
So the benefit line comprises of healthcare rates, their dental insurance, pension, the town's pension contributions, longevity pay if applicable to that employee, and life insurance. So it varies by employee.
But shouldn't that be broken down so that people could understand this? Or unless you have a different breakdown than we have. But those of, that are not accountants or have business backgrounds, this looks like the benefit package is twice the salary, and that is totally consistent through this. So I'm not saying you're not being transparent, but if people need to make a decision or go to their councilman and say, what's going on? How do you break this down?
I'm not aware.
Well, it's in line by line in each department, not by person, but in groups. You'll see the fire department, what their total pension is, what their, for the department, what their total health
I
care
get
is.
that, this transfers into the other, I get that. And you better be really good at shuffling papers and matching them up to come up with the numbers. But you can't change it now. But if you're looking at a budget, and I bet the council, do you all know what these benefits break down to off the top of your head?
So, John, one thing I'll say is that for Kristen, I think, might even been one before you, all these items were in one part of the budget as one compiled number for pension, healthcare. Kristen, was it you who broke it down by individual? Because it was easier, well,
Yes, I had.
it's not
to use
easier
it.
for you, but
It's easier, it's more transparent, and that's also the way the state wants it reported to them on a quarterly report. So dual purpose, it was more transparent to have it in each department, and then that's the way it's.
And if you take those 7 to 10 items, whatever they may be, that's 7 to 10 more lines per position, which ultimately make this 3 times thicker.
No.
So I get what you're
I get
saying.
that part, but to look at a budget and just those 2 items.
Yeah.
And you are not familiar, just like I guess you're not familiar with the total breakdown is. How do you look at the number and say, okay, this makes sense? The numbers that you're looking at, okay, as a layman, all right, is telling me that somebody made a $57,000 salary, which is not a lot of money, okay? I'm not saying these people are overpaid.
Yep.
But when you switch over to the benefit and it's 149, that's almost double your salary. Where do you have a job where your benefit package is double your salary? The numbers don't match to me. I mean, they just don't. I'm sure somebody must have an explanation, but looking at it black and white in front of you, just like I said, somebody makes 57,000 and they got $140 some odd thousand benefit package.
Kristen, is FICA and social security?
Yeah. I guess social security.
So that's why.
The biggest pension.
When you take
Pension.
FICA, pension, social security, healthcare, that's probably more than their salary right off the bat. 23,000 is family plan, 25,000 family plan, that's half their salary.
From what the breakdown I did in here, I'm finding the average healthcare per person is about 23,000 and change. Okay?
For a family.
Family.
Okay, I'm not arguing that because I know that's a real number. Okay, I'm not arguing the real numbers, I'm arguing what people can understand and not understand. Then, we go into some other stuff. I know the school budget and your budget are totally different things, I get that. Right, under the police department, the crossing guards are a line item. Okay? Under that line item also has a column for benefits. You go to the school department, they have a line item for crossing guards. It's not broken down into whatever. The two numbers don't match. And then you look at the revenues of the town, okay? I'm anticipating in my own mind that the school reimburses the town or the police department budget for the money. That's the best in my mind I can come up with. But why doesn't it show up as a revenue in the police department? If that's the way it works, if it doesn't work that way, please tell me.
I was told that they're not reimbursing us for crossing guard in this year, so it shouldn't be an expense in the school
But
department budget.
it's on their budget as an expense, and it has been for years.
This is the first year. I don't know why it's still there, but my numbers are correct, I get them right from Sherry.
No. I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody, whatever I talk about, I'm not looking at personality, what job, whatever. I'm looking at what I do best, numbers. And I can only go by what is printed in front of me. Now, until you just told me that, and for anybody else that might be here, if you have both budgets, the numbers are on both budgets. Do we know that it doesn't exist anymore? No, we do not, except for it doesn't make sense when you look at it, is that correct?
If you see it on theirs, but
Well, I got theirs and I've had ours. My issues are, and have been, all right, you guys run a business, okay? I'll say it again for probably 10,000 times, all right? You're the board of directors that we appointed to run this corporation, this town. You choose a director that's supposed to do all the work of this town, through his department heads. Businesses have to take hits, businesses have to make really hard decisions according to the economy and how the windy road goes. How on earth can we increase our budget, okay, with our level of funding right now? Also knowing that the school is in the middle of trying to put a package together to build schools. The school has a deficit. On their end, they're looking to, and they have to make cuts, I get it. Like I just said, it's difficult. But if you look at the cuts are for the people who need assistance the most. Most of the cuts that I saw on that budget had to do with special education needs. Okay? Why does it always seem that the people at the bottom are always paying the price? That's just on that side. On the town side, okay, you know as well as I do through census, the town is heavily elderly population. Okay, fixed incomes. They can't manipulate their income. I can manipulate mine. You raise my taxes $1,000, I go do a couple of jobs, I raise $1,000, I can do that. These poor people can't do that. But why is the burden always the heaviest on the bottom? Same thing when I look at the raises going across the board, I couldn't figure out if there's a percentage that anybody uses or not because they're all different numbers. And people deserve raises. Again, I run a company, I have to keep my employees. They have to have a living wage. Like I said, that one salary figure was $57,000. That doesn't keep you alive very long. Right, just yesterday, Rhode Island housing number is you have to make about $148,000 to afford a house in this state. So $57,000, I'm not saying that person's overpaid. But when we're looking to try and do a budget and save everybody, why did the ones on the top get the biggest raises, the ones on the bottom didn't? And why did the ones on the top get the raises in the first place when we need to cut money? The school's coming to us as the town because they need more money. I don't know what this package is costing to put together for the cost of building the new schools and so forth. I can't find out if it came out of our budget or school budget, but it wasn't cheap, and it's not cheap. Through this whole process, as the town manager said, do you know how much federal funding you're getting for the town? Has anybody got that number yet?
Federal funding for,
Support from the federal government.
we have some small grants, we don't get a lot.
Okay, but
We
you
get
get,
state funding.
We get.
okay, you get state funding, which comes from federal funding, is that how it works?
It's not all from then, no, it's not all.
But when I look on the budget, on the school side, they get federal funding and they get town funding. They get federal funding. Does anybody know if that money even is going to exist?
I don't think any of us know that at this point.
Okay, so how can anybody sit here and try to come down with a budget that technically involves both situations? When you're talking about maybe money, you're gonna obligate us to maybe money?
Well, unfortunately, the state's budget and the town's budget, of course, I think there's only a few towns that match the state budget. But our town budget is 6 months difference from the state budget, so we have to wait until June, July to get what we're actually gonna get in state aid.
Which isn't fair to the cities and towns. Now, I'm not saying any of this is fair. But as a council, me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people, are asking you to really please try to help the people at the bottom. Do not hurt any more people. We have to make cuts, we have to struggle. Maybe next year, 2 years from now, we'll be in a better position. But with all the unknown that is out there with federal funding at this point in time, to make any drastic moves for a town is actually stupidity, Mike. And that's, you know, I'm not the best business operator in the world, but numbers tell me everything. Numbers dictate if I give raises, if I don't hire as many people, if I use used equipment, new equipment. My numbers dictate everything, just like it's dictated here. But there's so many unknown things here that don't make sense to me. I'm looking at probate, and I have to go with the verbiage at the bottom that explains that department. Okay, and I've got probate judge gets a weekly stipend. Blah, blah. Okay, now you go look for, oh no, he's not even on that page, you gotta go over here to legal. Then you look at legal, okay? And you've got projected debt, okay? I looked at the lawsuits that you had to settle, okay? I'm not saying every year is the same amount, but if you're gonna budget the number, you need to take the average of those 4 years, 3 years, whatever, and you're gonna put that as possibly a debt, because you've been concurring it for years. That's not there. So there's no debt structure for lawsuits. So you get $160,000 lawsuit that through 1, 2, whatever, which is actually the average, which I did. Shouldn't you be accounting for that you're probably gonna pay for that? But when you have to pay for that, where's the money come from?
We talked about that last time during our budget hearing about putting a budget line item in there, and I think it was said that it would come out of the surplus fund.
Right, the adverse effect is if we do it through surplus fund or in really necessary, if we need to get a bond for it. Although that's after the fact response, if we put a line item, we're gonna have to tax that. We're gonna tax people now for something that's not, and I'm a firm believer in having a savings account And we've been blessed with some surpluses over the last few years, and hopefully that will continue. But I'd rather have a surplus because we're doing the best planning, the best managing, and maybe luck has something to do with it, the economy doing better where we can make those advances as opposed to putting something in now and then having to tax it and put that out there on the taxpayer now.
Yeah, I think we all agreed that that's not the way to do it, if you have $100 potential lawsuit out there to tax people now, when it doesn't come to fruition, is putting it up front. And as you said, that would add to the burden of the people right now.
I can equate to that
Yeah.
on the revenue side, okay? We do snow plowing. Okay, I call it maybe money. All right? I have to take, and I generally use 7 years, okay? To see what my revenue was for that line item. To say, what is my average for that service? I can almost count on that as revenue. Okay? It's gonna be in that range. You have a consistent debt in that category. It's not like it's 1 year you have it. 1 year you had $520,000 you paid out. Okay? So you have that line item that's gonna have to be paid, but instead of putting it in a category, we'll take it from a fund which I have no idea even how much money we put in it. And I could go on for days, but I'm just asking you, there's a lot of people hurting. However you can manage, work with the school. These kids, in my opinion, cannot be hurt any more than they are. Okay, they're gonna have different teachers, they're gonna have different environments, so forth and so on. And I'm not an expert on special ed children, but I do know the needs of people. And these kids become attached to their surroundings. They become attached to certain people that they interact with, that they're comfortable with. And if you jumble them all up, and also the chart that they have shows that the needs for special ed children has risen dramatically through the years. It's not coming down, it's going up. So as the managers, decision makers of this town, please keep 2 categories in mind here. The elderly, who cannot help themselves with an income, and the children who already have needs. Please don't make their needs any worse than they are. Let some of us that can afford it suffer a little bit. We'll get over it. Thank you.
We actually, I personally, and I know I've talked to the rest of the council too, we wish that we could not cut anything at the schools.
I'm sure you
I mean,
do.
that is a difficult situation.
I'm not
And-
saying that any of you are sitting up here and saying, you wanna cut.
No, that's
That
the
is a
last thing.
very
There are
difficult
families, there are
thing when you're
people.
talking about human
That's correct.
beings, their livelihood, their welfare. That's a
Yes.
very hard decision. But it's a lot easier to take from the heavy than the light. The heavy will make it. And maybe it can get compensated going forward. But we all have to understand, sometimes we gotta give up something for somebody or something.
And you're absolutely right. The needs of the children in the schools, and the superintendent has made that clear. She's presented
But
to us.
that
His
burden
only
cannot
is,
be brought this side to hurt the elderly even more. You people have
that's,
to find a
that's
balance.
It's a tough
exactly right.
situation
I
because
didn't say it was easy.
it's a tough situation because you need money to keep those kids educated. But you can't hit it on this side, so where do they get the money?
So-
Because they have to come to the town council and they have to go to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And we as council people and school committee members have voted for contracts that obligate pay increases, so on and so forth. And we think when we approved those contracts, we gave reasons why. The police department was in the bottom 5 paid across the state, and here we are training them, and they would leave here 2 years later and go to Warwick for $50 more a week.
I know people have done that, and during my presentation, I never said anybody was really overpaid.
No, you
No, no.
I didn't say that.
No, it's just,
The
it's,
benefit package, I got a lot of questions with, okay? Because those numbers, being in business all these years, if your benefit package, even if you're taking social security, that's really not a benefit.
but
I
that's,
mean, that comes out of your salary, period. Is that a benefit that your part of your salary is going towards your taxes, that's not a
Well, the
benefit.
town has a liability associated with it as
Yeah,
well.
so do I.
Well, I'm just saying, though, it's not just coming out of the paycheck,
No.
Yeah.
Your employee pays,
and we have
and the
employer.
employer pays.
Yes,
I get it.
yes.
To label it as a benefit for them, that's the wrong category. No, but it needs a lot more. I'm not gonna say, yes, it has to be transparency, so a layman can look at this and make some sense of it. The fact, I just happened to go by my accountants last week, with a friend of mine, I said, look at this for me, will you please? He said, John, why don't you go to New York and play a shell game? Because I can't figure it out. Thank you.
Any other comment during the public hearing?
Nate Hunter, 19 Patrick Quinn, West Warwick. My only concern is, I'm gonna tackle it from a different angle, the revenue side. I see that we're able to track how well we're going against our tax roll. How about all the other departmental revenues, civic center, all those things? How close are we to the budget from a percentage side? I see it on page, I think it's page 6. But I'm not sure.
So the civic center ice rink,
It's
that's a
separate.
separate budget.
Yep.
Sewer department, we'll be going over that budget in a workshop later, a little later on. So if you wanna see those revenues versus budget, you can, personally,
And are there any other things that we can do as a town to go after some more revenue? Other than tax, right? So I see a couple of departments in here are almost 80% of their revenue mix for the year, which is awesome, but I also see other department lines in here that have $0. So I'm not sure if that's an accounting issue or other things. Are we just not capturing all the revenue we should be capturing? And that's what I'm looking
Some of
for.
them are adjustments that are made in the last quarter of the year. Some of them I just made where the municipal court, the sewer admin fees, I just made that adjustment. So now that's 100% collected. They're just journal entry, but I do usually in the last quarter.
And other than this, would we actually see that as a taxpayer, seeing that getting collected?
You would see it in the next monthly report that I'm preparing for March, which would be on the 22nd agenda.
All right, thank you.
And they
There's
just
still
to let
3
you-
months to go, April, May, and June, which
Right.
Yeah,
we can't
so
forecast.
Yeah.
in theory, we should be about 75% of the way, but there's quite a few department lines in here that don't appear to be 75% to the revenue. So that's why I was asking.
And the town in the last couple of years has worked very hard to go after grants that are available and to see what's out there that we can use instead of using taxpayer dollars. So I have to say the town manager, I know the schools have a ton of grants. Even the Civic Center, I think, has gone after some. We have the CDBG money, so there are other ways that we try to bring money in. But as Mr. Reed pointed out, I think those are going to dwindle. for a
That's
bit
my
now.
concern
Yes.
is,
Yeah.
to Derek, to Mr. Reed's point, we're signing up for some revenue and it doesn't seem to be getting there. And then we're gonna have to pay all these expenses because we're signing up for those expenses.
I assume we've been very conservative in any revenue just because we're not sure about those things. Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Nate.
Any other public comment?
Sure, I'll take it. Eric Reed, 62 Drive. As far as the budget goes, I listened to my dad for a couple days about the numbers. Doesn't make sense for me. I'm not up for a 2 point whatever% he, Mr. Manager said here, I'm not up for all that.
2.3.
Closer to half to a 0 would be fine with me. But your decision, at the end of the day, I'm listening to my dad up here, you know, the teachers and stuff, and as you probably all know, I made a pretty good stand the other night about it. And he's right, it's all the kids that need things in these schools, their teachers are getting cut or moved or however it works, bumped, whatever they wanna call it, but when I was in school up there, we had a principal in Darien High School, Darien Junior High, and we had a vice principal. We didn't have dean, we didn't have assistant dean, we didn't have assistant principal, we didn't have any of it. So for me to sit there and look at teachers getting cut, that the kids need, Why is there no assistant position being cut?
So let me clarify that. So one thing by state law, and that doesn't mean no salaried employee is gonna get cut. By state law, you have to have your layoff notices out to your teachers in your local 94 by March 31st. With department heads, you do not need to have notice sent out to them. They can be cut at any time. So I don't know,
I mean, it's out there.
but that's the reason why you'll start seeing Warwick,
Yeah,
Cranston,
you get the.
all sending
you
out their
explain that,
notices
You get the
because of
bump and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, there's gonna be teachers who don't have a job at the end. And there's kids that are gonna have the fallout. It's just the way it goes.
And I
mean,
think the
listen to-
superintendent made it clear that night that there's a possibility of having a whole majority back.
Yeah,
And it's been done in a lot of cities and towns. West Warwick has not been a layoff notice community from year to year. This year is just, it went out to make sure that if they did have to make the cuts, if the council says, we're not giving you $991,000, they may have to make further cuts. So, that's one thing that I know the superintendent has been very vocal on. And you look at the budgets that she submitted over the years, there's been years with minimal increase or a little bit of increase or no increase.
but there's some big
So-
numbers, there's some big numbers on the top side, big numbers. We can probably do without if we put a little extra in. I mean, I went to school there, the same thing, I'm in the high school, it's just, and the same thing in the town. Everybody has an assistant, all right, I'll get into it, DPW. You got a director, an assistant director, and a foreman. Then I read the contract, the new contract says we don't have drivers no more, we have working drivers. Well, I can tell you, every damn truck I see on the road has a guy sitting in it playing on his phone. That's tax money being burnt. Yeah, I'm watching on Wakefield Street. 2 guys picking up trash today. 1 guy in the truck playing with his phone, foreman behind him, playing on his phone. What do we need all these supervisors for? Cut the jobs. Let the rest of them work. If you're a working driver, get out of the truck and work. Why? Because it's raining, we're gonna melt? I mean, I don't know. You see it all the time. I saw it when we were sweeping the streets out here. You got 3 dump trucks out there. You got 3 guys on blowers. You got 3 guys in trucks. Don't need those 3 guys in the trucks. Those trucks can sit there with the lights blinking. It doesn't make sense. So when I'm talking about it, you got assistants and you have positions that are not needed. Cut them. It's a sad reality. That saves money. That puts more money in the budget. That brings up your numbers. But to say, well, we're gonna put however $1 million raised into this thing, and we're not gonna make any real cuts, that's not helping us. That's just taken from the piggy bank. So, in my opinion, we need to make some cuts. The schools make cuts, I don't see any cuts to the town side. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, just to clarify one thing that Derek Reed just said, I think it was clear in my presentations, but just to reiterate, we do realize that, I've said it several times, that this year and in the future, there's gonna have to be more cuts across the board. And I did also mention an administrative restructure. The reason we don't see any administrative cuts in this round, this year's budget, is because all of the current administrators are in contracts. So as contracts come up, we will have to consider restructure. I do believe we are appropriately administratively staffed for mostly safety reasons, as well as the unfunded mandates. I gave you all a packet of that is largely administrative work. So I do believe we are properly staffed, but I also know the reality that cuts will include administrators moving forward. So I just wanted to clarify that. And if anybody had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Karen?
Thank you.
James?
Good evening, Paul Villa, 15 Janet Drive, West Warwick. I've obviously been accustomed to the setup on the town budget, as I did this for many years, but I just had a question, maybe a critique on the school side. I downloaded the school budget from the website, and the salary items are just listed as 38 million, whatever. There's no breakouts. Like, if I want to know what a police chief makes, what if I wanna know what a fire chief makes, I can go right to the department head salary. So maybe going forward, since this is like 61% of our budget, department heads should maybe be broken out, so we know how much each is making. Rather than just putting in one lump sum item as it is now, cause it's very difficult to determine who's making what or anything like that.
I see Karen taking a note of that, and that they have their own finance director, Lisa Cash, so.
Yeah, like I said, just as, it just makes it easier, I mean, nobody know, I know a lot, that's all teacher salaries, that's all administrators and everything else, but to make it more transparent, I just, as a critique, think that probably should be broken out a little bit more on the budget if we could. Other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment for the public hearing?
Tom 06 Colonial Way, debating whether to whip the dead horse or not, but just for the 2 cents and just a comment. Probably some of you know, last 12 years of my life, mostly my retired life, I've been a strong advocate for children through the court system. And the biggest majority of these children are challenged, severely challenged, little bit, but they're challenged. And I attribute the biggest part of that to the demise of the American family. We don't have families like we used to. These children are being taken care of by invalid grandparents that can barely take care of themselves, and they're taking care of these kids. The amount of children in special education, their school, their teachers, their classrooms, it's a safety net. They don't have it at home, they have it at school, they depend on it. And let's think 15 years in the future, these kids are gonna be adults. They're the ones that are gonna be working at the market. They're gonna be a clerk in the office. They're gonna be doing these jobs. We have to educate and get these kids trained to be productive members of society. And by cutting too many of the staff that are their safety net is going to be a detriment to our future in this community, in the state, and in the entire country, because it's not just West Warwick. This is everywhere, and we have to understand that. But I'm hoping and praying that very few or none of these special education folks lose their jobs, because it's going to crush these children that depend on it. That's their safety net. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Going once? Going twice? Nobody online?
No one's raised their hand.
Any comments from the council?
I have a question. Is the number still 2.38?
Should be getting updated numbers from Sal, hopefully by the end of the week, so after our next meeting.
So that may come down as of the next meeting.
Could stay the same. And then we have the appeals, and then some more tangibles coming in, so
We have the new tax rate by then too.
hopefully, Sal will get me something by the end of the week, so I'll have it for next Tuesday.
I just want to say one thing though, with everybody coming up tonight about the different cuts. Those cuts were presented to us by the school department. So we didn't have a say in where, in their budget, it's school department, school committee decided that, and it got presented to us. So, as far as I'm concerned, all we deal with the schools, I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs either. You know, especially, like, as Mr. Reed said, at the bottom. You know, but again, that's really not up to us though. It gets presented to us. And we only have to make a decision as far as the number that's presented to us, which is just
just under $1 million,
990.
991. So we just decide whether or not we're going to grant them that amount or lesser amount or nothing. So, but as far as where that money goes, that's not a council decision at all. I just want to clear that up.
The fact is that I think as the school has made their presentations, and as Karen presented to us, they've gone through a very arduous, difficult, long process to meet the rules. And I am sure that they have taken into consideration what will be best for, I'm confident, what will be best for the children. That being said, the realities are, I think the number was a $3 million number on top of, and maybe even more, on top of the 991.
Right.
So very difficult job. Again, I hope we win the lottery and don't have to lay off anyone, but, so I applaud them for doing what they did. And again, they, because of the rules in place, had to do that by the end of March. Is that correct? So those, and all those, my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, all the listing of people that we saw on last Tuesday night, those are people that could be cut once the process is done. It's not the number of people that will be cut.
Correct.
So I assume it'll be a number much lower than that, and if we can get it to zero, it'd be wonderful, but the reality is, we don't have $3 million to just give
Right.
to them either. So that's the reality. So they have done what they've had to do, and, again, I wish we could come up with money that we didn't have to lay off one person.
And I just want to reiterate what everybody just said here, but also, we were all in attendance of that meeting. We heard it from the teachers. We saw how dedicated and how concerned they are. But I also looked up at that stage and saw members of that school committee and Mr. Savage that they weren't enjoying what they were doing. If you just saw the looks on some of their faces at times, it's not something that was easy to do. I commended them for what they had to do. Because we have been there a couple of times. We have been on that side when we privatized garbage, we did whatever through the years, and they've been there through the years. It's just that, as Mary Beth has always said, we're one, we're West Warwick. We're not school versus town, like I was here when it was that way, and it was not good. Even when we had separate budget meetings and separate votes on the budget, people would get up and vote the school budget down and vote the town budget up. It's all one budget, and it's been that way for many years now. So when you look at what they're doing and what they had to do, it's never an easy decision for anybody, and it's never an enjoyable night for anybody when they have to make those announcements.
Listen, I'm a wizard. I actually graduated from the West Warwick Public School System, unlike the rest of you Coventry
Oh,
guys.
yeah,
You were
throw that in.
smart enough to actually come to West Warwick, but that's all right.
I told you my excuse.
Yeah. However, I'm proud to tell people that I graduated from West Warwick High School. And that's because of what happened. I know you can figure out how old I am, in 1978, but also because of what happens today. That was last week, wasn't it? Yes.
No, I'm going back in.
Oh, all right. Because of the way they conduct themselves, because of how they operate, because they do care. And our reputation is such that in the state, that we have a very special education, that we know that there are needs that are growing. So I am proud to be a West Warwick High School and West Warwick Public School graduate. My children are. There's nothing I would like more than to say, we had the money for you. But again, unless we win the lottery, I'm not sure that we do have the $3 million to reinstate all those positions. But each one of them, each one of the teachers and administrators in the school committee, they care about the kids of West Warwick. And the schools are our heart and our lifeblood, to be honest with you. It's central to anything we do here in town. So difficult. And again, I applaud the superintendent for being here and being honest with us and letting us know, where things are. So,
And if I may, Mrs. Tarasevich, I do have something, I'm sure you've given us this information in your previous presentations, but I think it would be good for everybody to hear. One of the things that opened my eyes listening to the superintendent over the last couple of weeks was the amount of money that leaves the town with the students that go elsewhere. So just for everybody's information, I have it in front of me, something that the superintendent gave us a couple of weeks ago. RIDE, the Rhode Island Department of Education, is the one that sets the tuition reimbursement rates, correct? In 2023, a student going out of West Warwick to another school, say a special needs or special education or DCYF placement, that number was I'm gonna just round the numbers, but that number was $43,000. 2024, it jumped up to $58,000. 2025, it's $73,000. So in less than, in 2 years, it's just under $30,000 per student more,
66%.
which is a tremendous 66% increase. The question I have for you, Superintendent, is for those, and I'm gonna talk about the CTE, the charter school, the mayoral academy students. If we offer something at our schools, do we have to let them go to a different school? I think this would be eye-opening for everybody.
Thanks for asking the clarifying questions. The rules are school choice in terms of CTE, charters, mayoral academies, not regular public schools. Regular public school, you go to the school in the town that you live in. As the rules are in Rhode Island now, if a student wants to go to a CTE pathway or a charter school, mayoral academy, they've got the right to go wherever they want. Regarding transportation, there's a transportation region that we're also responsible not only for the tuition to where they want to go, but to transport them. So one thing that we're working on now is to shrink those regions. The proposal is to go from, I think it's 7 regions to 9 to make more smaller ones, which will help us, but that's not 2 years down the road. If we have the same program right now, they're still allowed to go wherever they want. We're fighting that. And we have been with RIDE for 3 or 4 years. RIDE's trying to come up with a substantially similar list. So in other words, if you could, of programs, if you can prove that the program you have in your town is substantially similar to the one the student wants to go to, you've got the right to keep the student in your town and not pay the tuition to another district. The problem where the roadblock or the obstacle we're running into is with RIDE. There's maybe a couple in the entire state that they approve as substantially similar. So we've been working on this for 3 or 4 years, as I said, and we've really hit an obstacle. They seem to find a minute difference to make it not substantially similar. We just talked about this today at a meeting, actually. So it's frustrating, but overall, to answer your question, the rule is right now, students have the right to go where they want. We have to pay the tuition.
And for everybody in the group here, we do have programs in our schools where we take students in. And this is one of the questions I asked the superintendent 2 weeks ago. We have 19 students coming inbound. So if you want to look at that as a revenue item, however you want to put it, we're taking in some money. My question was, how many are going outbound? It's 239. West Warwick students are going elsewhere. So that 19 doesn't really do more than just take the edge off in terms of finances. I believe between the school committee, the superintendent, everybody involved with that budget, they've really worked it as hard as they can to get it down to where they got it. It's I say it's $1 million. It's less than $1 million. It's 991, but let's say it's $1 million. That's a big ask But when you look at what they were originally faced with and what they had to do to get down to that number, it's impressive to say the least. And obviously the goal is to continue with the services that they offer our students and not let that suffer. And I'm sure the superintendent's not gonna let that suffer.
So Karen, if someone wants to, say, chooses a music path,
Mhm.
and they go, just say to Johnston. And then we have the same, similar music pathway, that has to be cleared by right.
Correct.
So what if that student, second year in, changes that path? Goes from music to,
That,
criminal justice?
well, that gets really, really difficult. Typically, if a student chooses a pathway past the first year of a 3-year pathway, it gets really difficult to change. It's almost, I don't want to ever say impossible, but because they change their course requirements, it's hard to make up that time.
Okay.
You know, I never want to say impossible,
No.
but you talk about summer school, my grandpa, you know, it's
Okay.
hard to shift those gears. Because the programs are so prescribed intentionally, because that's the pathway. And just to circle back, if I could answer one of your questions regarding the layoffs. Contractually, we can only lay off 10 certified positions, in other words, in the teachers union. The reason there were so many more listed, as we noted, as the agenda items were attached, we have to give layoff notices to any other person who somebody with seniority may bump. So that's why it sounds like there's so many more positions being lost, but that's not really true. And then, like I said, that night, there were some other, cases where long-term subs, their assignment is over at the end of the year. They're hired for the year for typically somebody out on leave, for whatever reason. So when they're hired for that year. Legally, I don't believe we have to give them that extra notice, because when they're hired, their notice is then that you're hired now through June 30th, 2025. It's almost a courtesy to kind of remind them that, this is your assignment's end. So that's why it seemed like, so trust me, one position is too many. So I'm not in any way trying to minimize these actions. But I did want to clarify that contractually, it would only be, and not minimizing, 10 positions, not elimination of all of the notices that were distributed, just to clarify.
Don't you have some grants that,
Yeah,
are
and a
over
couple
with now?
couple of the positions, were layoff because the grant funding ended. So again, if it's a grant funded position, we can't absorb that in the local budget. So there were 3 the other night. Those people will go back to their position of record. So that's another kind of bumping situation where the person who took their job while they had the grant funded position would need that notice. That's how the numbers of notices kind of accumulate, but for all of those above reasons.
So do you anticipate those grants coming in next?
Couple of
next
them
September?
we're well, even sooner, within 2 or 3 weeks, we should get a very big, it's called a CLSD grant. It's a literacy grant. We're really hoping, we already had one and we were successful with it. We have no reason to think we're not going to get it. So that will help fund some of the coaching positions. Back to David's point earlier, it's just such a terrible timeline dilemma.
Yeah.
So, and it's upsetting and, it's people's livelihoods, we know that, but it's just this awful timeline and that we have to meet.
The state aid is, I'm sorry.
No.
The state aid still obligated to Title 16 like the town is.
Mhm.
So we know the state aid's gonna stay at least the same and hopefully more.
I'm hoping it stays the same.
Yeah.
We've been lucky in the past years that we've gotten more. I don't have that same feeling this year. We're really lucky if it's more.
It can't go less.
I don't believe so.
Title
But-
16.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
well,
We've never
yeah,
had that.
technically there is,
These
yes.
guys are getting like 800
Actually,
something
I do believe that there is no maintenance of effort on the state level. So I think that it possible it could go less. I believe. So And I think that's wrong too, when municipalities are held to
It's
that,
absolutely wrong.
that's correct. So I think the biggest takeaway is there are unknowns, as Mr. Reed said. That's always been the case, but they seem to be magnified this year. There are a number of edicts and mandates that come from the state that come with no money. Mark talked about the increase in the tuition rate set by RIDE, and from 43 to 73. And oh, by the way, as you prepared your budget, you don't know what it's going to be for next year because you won't find out till September or October.
Correct. We won't
So-
know how many kids that is and what the tuition's gonna be.
So more kids and you're right, we're in this conundrum because we're talking about building schools, and part of the reason to build schools is because we don't have space and bring kids back into the district and bring those dollars back with the kids. So it's complicated. It's, and by the way, it's not just happening in West Warwick. It's happening in Coventry and Warwick and Cranston and even East Greenwich and Barrington. It's all the same issue. And a lot of it is at the state level, with things that are pushed down. So we need to do some work there is what has to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the state level, but it doesn't mean that it absolves us of doing our part.
Not now.
We have to do our part. We
Right.
have to be fiscally conservative where we can. And with the money that we have to spend it wisely. And just one more point, because I kind of harp on this. I was a hockey dad, right? A lot of people know that. When it comes to pathways programs, I can't tell you how many of my son's teammates, when it was time to go to high school, decided, well, and I'm just gonna throw one out there. East Greenwich has a better hockey team than West Warwick, or if I'm a Coventry resident, Pontiac, sorry, Justin. Pontiac has a better program than Coventry, or whatever the case might be. A lot of these kids skip the district to find so-called better athletics, because we all know that's their pathway to the NHL or the Major League Baseball or the NFL, right? Because the parents are a little delusional in that thought. And I'm gonna be honest with you, when Matthew was in 8th grade, we decided to offer him the opportunity to look at Coventry because he wanted to be in the military when he graduated. He wanted to go into the military, and they had an ROTC program. And we left that mostly up to him. Obviously, we were gonna decide what was gonna happen, but he decided that he was gonna forego the ROTC program in Coventry because he wanted to be with his friends in West Warwick. But a lot of people do make that decision to send their kids elsewhere based on something like athletics. And that's kind of, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's kind of what we're up against here. It's what we're fighting against here, what we're trying to overcome. So please keep that in mind.
If I can indulge me one more second, there's been several comments over the past couple of weeks about special education teachers and how they've been impacted by this whole process. It's very complicated process, how too much to get into tonight. It's this whole separate workshop, and I actually have a meeting with Derek Reed on Thursday to help explain some of these decisions we made and why and how. I assure you that our most needy students were very, very carefully thought of in this process. And even if some positions right now are impacted by this budget proposal, I assure you the needs of the students were considered and will be met. And again, it's a kind of a lengthy explanation and process how that's all determined. I just wanted to add that 2 cents worth.
As I've said, I have the utmost confidence that it was done thoughtfully and looking to impact the fewest number of people that you can impact, knowing that we have, it's not just in the schools, in society, mental health issues and people are struggling overall, and the children seem to be struggling more, so.
And the children's needs are met.
Right.
Same situation, they can go to a school and it's gonna cost us triple.
Mhm.
So it's, we should meet the needs here.
I appreciate the comments and the opportunity to further explain. It's a big decision and I appreciate
Clarified a
the
lot.
time. Thank you.
Tonight.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none on the public hearing, council, any comments, concerns? We'll be having another public hearing on the 8th of this month, 6 P.M. Any questions, concerns, you can bring it to the council, or you can email, call us, whatever you'd like to do. Let you adjourn now.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, have a good night.
Oh, now.
Unless you want